Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our channel. Tonight, we're going to talk about shadow work. Dun, dun, dun. What does shadow work mean? Or doing your shadow work? Everything shadows. I know it sounds awfully silly, but it's an important part of our spiritual work. So tonight, we're going to start with Yaila. What have you got to say about shadow work, Yaila?
Thank you, Corey. Well, I think this topic is a really interesting topic. I've heard in the spiritual community, people talk a lot about shadow work and the shadow side, but I feel like they don't always talk about what does that actually look like and what do you do with that. And so I love that we are talking about the shadow side tonight. When I think of our shadow side or shadow work, what comes to my mind is all of those patterns that keep showing up in your life, thoughts, beliefs, ways of being, kind of your pieces of you that aren't always running from your conscious side. They're kind of behind the scenes and your unconscious and super subconscious. It's kind of what's running the show on the back end. And so our shadow side can come from our upbringing. It can come from programming from society, community, school, education. It can kind of come from all these different places. And it's how we internalize the world around us as our younger selves when we were still kind of just learning about the world. And so sometimes our shadow side can make up stories or beliefs or ways to survive depending on what showed up in the world around us and how we interpreted that. And so when I think of the shadow side, my number one question that I go to is, well, how would I even know it's a shadow side if it's in the shadows, right? So some ways to identify if something might be your shadow side is if you are constantly distracting yourself with outside things. So for example, if you kind of feel like you're supposed to be doing something, but instead you scroll through social media for a long period of time, like you're not wanting to face something that's showing up. You're feeling anxious, maybe you're feeling a little more low for like days at a time. And you've identified that, okay, this isn't coming from somebody else, but it's in my space and I'm not sure what that is. That is a time to explore what's going on internally for you. So it's like patterns that keep showing up. Maybe there are ways that you handle situations that you would like to do differently, but you kind of default to these ways of being. That can be a shadow aspect of yourself, and you haven't fully identified why those patterns keep showing up, or maybe you identified that the pattern's there, but you don't know why you keep defaulting in a certain way. That could be a shadow side for you to explore. So it's those thoughts, beliefs, ways of being that kind of get us feeling out of alignment. We notice that we are distracting. We notice that we are maybe looking for it's just ways to disconnect from ourselves. Sometimes there is a time in our life where we just kind of want to shut out what's going on in the world and just watch a fun movie or something funny. This isn't what I'm talking about. This is something that keeps showing up where it's like you feel like you want more, you feel like you need more, you want there to be a change, but instead of exploring what that might look like or why things might be there, you kind of disconnect and distract yourself with whatever that might be. So a way to kind of explore this is just to check in for your body as far as what are you feeling? Can you identify the emotion that's there? Is it frustration? Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it loneliness? Whatever feeling might be there. And then I like to ask, why do I think I'm feeling this way? And if you're not sure, then just imagine like, well, if I were to assume where this might be coming from, where might it be coming from? And then I just keep asking question on top of question until I kind of come to either a deeper belief or like a pattern that's showing up. It's like I kind of get an insight of there's no more questions I can keep asking. This is kind of the final place. So it's like, what's the emotion? Why do I think it's there? is this the first time I felt this way? When was the first time? Is there a time beyond that? Is this my original belief? Like, the more curious you keep getting as far as what emotions might be showing up, the more clarity you'll get. And once you kind of shine the light and you just start asking questions and you just kind of observe without judging yourself or making yourself wrong for what could be there, maybe it's a certain pattern that keeps showing up in relationships. Our relationships are a really great way to identify those shadow beliefs and aspects of ourselves. If there's patterns that you see, it's like, okay, what am I feeling? Where did that come from? Is this the first time? And you can start to identify um, what it is. And then when you shine that light, you can just ask, what's a different way I want to handle this? And you can kind of ask more questions to kind of zoom the lens out and keep shining light on another step, another way of being. So I don't want to keep rambling on, but that's kind of what I think of the shadow side and the shadow aspect and kind of how to identify the shadow. But how about you, Peyton? What do you think about the shadow side?
Oh my God, this is such an important topic. I think it is probably the most important thing for us to be working on as light workers right now, because collectively we are being confronted with our shadow, which is why the world is kind of in such a chaotic position right now. But shadow work for me is also, this is the hardest work I have done on this path, was the shadow work. And so there's no avoiding it. It's super important and there's no shortcut. So it's that part of our spiritual journey that is a little less fun than some of the other shiny toys we get to play with, developing our abilities, all of that. Shadow work, I think, is a necessary part of the ball game. We have to do it. And so the way I think of shadow work, or what it means to me, is being willing to look at those parts of ourselves that we have been hiding from, either because they don't feel good and we just don't want to deal with them, or because we can't see them. They could be completely in our subconscious, and so they kind of torment us, but we can't really put our finger on what it is. So any of those things that cause us, like you were saying, Yaila, to feel really uncomfortable in our skin, in our body, I agree, is part of the shadow work that we're doing. And so for me, when I think of shadow work, and in my practice, shadow work for me is all about making peace with our own darkness, those things that we're hiding from in ourselves. And so it's a tough process because our ego mind will really go to certain lengths to keep us from identifying and releasing these things. It can make us feel almost unsafe to confront some of these dark emotions that are coming to the surface in all of us right now. And so it's just one of those parts of the process that there's no shortcut. There's no easy way to do it. The only way through it, or to get beyond it, is to go through it. And so the way I approach shadow work is, whenever I do it, I try to do it and have my clients do it when these issues come up organically, because it's harder to do it if you are doing it from a mental perspective. If you're like, I'm going to sit and do my shadow work today, it doesn't work quite like that, because it's not a mental exercise. And so I like to work with it with my clients with, when something is coming up for you authentically, when you're starting to feel real distress, real discomfort in a particular area, when you have that issue that keeps beating you in the head, but you don't really have a good grasp on what it is or what to do about it, that's the time to do your shadow work. And so for me, shadow work is all about, what is the emotion behind the story? So the story may be the relationship is going up in flames, or you can't find the relationship, or money is not coming. But get beyond the story, because that's just what the universe is using to get your reflection, or to get your attention. It's the reflection. So get beyond the story to the emotion underneath it. And so when you sit with that situation and you're like, okay, what is the emotion underneath this? And allow yourself to really be honest about this. This isn't time to be spiritual. This isn't time to put the rose tinted glasses on. What is the emotion? Even if it's those ones we are taught that are bad, maybe it's hatred, maybe it's jealousy, maybe it is unworthiness. We do not want to feel these emotions. And that's why our ego kind of puts up all of this smoke and mirrors to keep us from looking at it. But if you're willing to sit with yourself in meditation and identify what that emotion is, and just let yourself feel it. And without squirming away from it, or like you said, Yaila, distracting yourself, that's a big one. But if you can let yourself honestly feel it, let yourself just be like, I'm going to feel the rage, full tilt, no breaks. I'm just going to let myself feel it. And the guides say, the Pleiadians always say, you don't have to feel it for a long time. You don't have to marinate and take a bath in it for 3 days. They say only 45 seconds to a minute is enough to start transmuting the energy. And so for me, if you can sit and identify it, sit with that emotion, let yourself feel it, and then love and accept this as part of you, because this is a facet of yourself. This is something that we have been hiding from, that we have not been willing to look at. And so just bringing it, and Corey, you used a great expression a couple videos back. You said, bring it into the light of your consciousness. And so just by sitting with something and owning it, just being like, I am feeling rage in this situation. Just that self-honesty and being willing to look it in the eye and own it as part of you, and then love yourself anyway. Love that this is part of you. And this might be something you dragged in from a past life, so you never know necessarily. You don't have to pinpoint the origin if you just love and accept that this is part of you. This is your energy. And energy, as we say over and over again in our videos, it's not good or bad. But it is yours. And so you gotta be willing to look at it. That is the shadow work. So if you can look at it, sit with it, feel it just for a little while, love and accept yourself. And for me, forgiveness is always a huge part of this, because whenever we are dealing with these shadow sides, I find that there is so much judgment that we bring into it, either judging ourselves or judging the other party in the story. We can get into blame, all those avoidance things that our ego wants to distract us with, the shiny toys. If you can forgive yourself that you feel this emotion, that you have this emotion, you can actually release it and move through it fairly quickly. Because this being willing to look at it and be honest with it and own it as part of you is what releases the energetic charge. That's what takes it away, makes the energy neutral, brings it back so that you can redirect that in a way you want to direct it. And that's how we heal. That's how we do the shadow work and move through it. So it's really, this is an absolutely critical part of our spiritual process. Not a fun part of the process, but there's no shortcut for it. And it's the most rewarding work that you can do also. So that's how I look at shadow work. How about you, Miss Corey?
Well, I agree with you that it is really important, and it's not the easiest. And, there's a saying that for me sums up shadow work. And the saying is, it's not our task to seek love. It is our task to seek and remove all the barriers that stand against love. Because we are all born and made in love. And it's also known as the healing work. That's what shadow work is to me. Because, none of us get out of this life unscathed. Whether, it's our upbringing or just being out in the world. And if we don't have the tools to survive or cope in the world, we get hurt. And so the shadow work is that deep, deep healing work that puts us back to that space where we can love ourselves again, like you were talking about, Peyton. And for me and for my clients, a lot of my clients, it can come in many different ways. In doing the shadow work, I find that some of my clients are great at doing automatic writing. Just sitting down with that pen and paper and just starting to write and be able to acknowledge what is happening. And so a lot of the clients that I work with come to me already very, very wounded. And so we need to start somewhere. So oftentimes it is pardon me, it is in starting, yes, with the mind. What is in the mind? What is the trauma? And oftentimes that automatic writing helps just to even identify what the emotion is connected to it. Because when we don't do healing work, it's like having, suitcases loaded with so much of your stuff that maybe, yes, you have carried for lifetimes. And you just keep putting more stuff in it and more stuff in it and more stuff in it. And as you carry it along your life, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And part of the shadow work is being able to, yes, like you ladies were saying, is to let go of the wounds, the hurts, the sufferings, anything that stands in the way of loving ourselves. Because when we can love ourselves, we can love others. And I know that that is a saying that, it's like, really? But it is the truth. And speaking of truth, shadow work is all the things, all the barriers that get in our way from living a full life, so that we can get to our own truth, not the truth that we were brought up with, not the truth that our parents told us, not even maybe the truth that our peers or the outside world gave to us. But shadow work is that deep inner work, our sufferings, our hurts, our traumas that have happened to us. And we start with this lifetime. But when you find an energy worker, right? When you find somebody who is a healer or an energy worker, I have found for me and for my clients, in a safe place that you can get vulnerable, because with shadow work, you have to get vulnerable. And in this world today, I know for me, it was really hard to get vulnerable. And I know for many of my clients, it's very, very, very hard to get vulnerable. But to find a safe place, and oftentimes, light workers, energy healers, Yaila and I, do theta healing, which is finding those core beliefs, those shadows within ourselves, so that we can help that person heal those beliefs. And I have found that in the beginning, it's silly, but one of the things that when I started doing the shadow work, which it's been going on near 30 years, actually, that I've been doing a lot of shadow work. And I was scared to death to even look inside of myself. And I was afraid to cry, because I did have so many deep wounds that I thought that I would never stop crying, because I had so many of those. And crying is part of that. It's that release, right? It's that release of finally letting go of the things, the barriers that stand in the way of love, of loving ourselves, of living a full life. And since I started doing the energy, learning all the clairvoyance and the healing modalities that I have learned, and been able to help others with the energy work, the shadow work has become easier. And because the veil is much thinner right now, what took me years and years and years, we're able to accomplish a lot faster now. But you can do all the, all the energy work, all the woo-woo, right? The woo-woo stuff. But without the shadow work, you can't raise your vibration and you can't live a happy life. So even though it's not the fun part of this spiritual journey, it's the most rewarding. because you get to learn about yourself and you get to dump all the stuff that you've been carrying in those suitcases, that baggage that you've been carrying your whole life. And not just the contents in it, you might be able to get rid of some of the actual suitcases so that your journey in this life becomes much lighter. And you get to know your true self. And I can tell you that when you do the shadow work, you'll be surprised and overjoyed as to the true self that you really do find. Because I've never had a client that I've worked with that actually didn't fall in love with themselves once they started and got into the shadow work, which is continual. It really never ends. It just gets easier and easier as you get to the deeper layers and deeper layers. It's just the starting of it, really, that stops us from wanting to do it. Because by the time we're looking at our shadows, you know, we've lived quite a life, and we've experienced and picked up a lot of experiences and a lot of energy, and held on tight to them. So
Well, one
shadow.
thing I would like to, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Corey. One thing I want to add to the shadow work is usually when you are noticing, you know, misalignment, something's off. Now that maybe you've heard the discussion on shadow work and the concept of it, what I find, and I'm such a firm believer, is things that are coming to the surface are things that are ready to be healed and ready to be transmuted. And so, and you are ready to heal and transmute that energy. So there's always something for you to get out of it. You know, that's one of the questions I like to ask too, like, what are the feelings I'm feeling? What is useful for me to know about this? You know, sometimes, you know, there's a lot of information that you learn about yourself, and you can choose if you want to keep that or not. Or, you know, I love what you said, Peyton and Corey, like, love yourself through it. You know, none of us are perfect. It's like, oh, okay, I'm human, got this thing still going on. It's all right. And the more you accept it, it's like, it just makes it less of a big deal afterward, I find. So yeah, stuff that's showing up, it means it's ready to be healed. And I think about that with the collective right now. You know, we're kind of at this big crescendo of there's a lot of shadow aspects going on around us. And our work right now is to look at those pieces within ourselves, because we are part of the collective. And so as we can love ourselves for it, we find that forgiveness and compassion, and we can help it heal all around. So.
And because it's ready to be healed, right? So it's all coming up because it's ready. It's ready to be healed and change.
Yeah. And once you do this, once you start this process, and it is a little daunting when you first start doing shadow work, a little scary, this is where you will see all the progress and the growth. So if you're feeling like you're not really growing, you're not really making the progress you want to, a lot of times it's because you're running into these old energies that need to be released. And so this is where I see my clients start to just absolutely start to blossom and just explode in their lives. Because once you, like you said, Corey, drop this baggage, you start to make progress so much more quickly. And then once you get the hang of it, like you said, Yaila, you can move through each layer quicker. Then you're like, oh, this is just that old thing coming up again. I love myself, I forgive myself, you know, and then as long as you're willing to look at it and acknowledge it, it's easy to release, actually, surprisingly, given how heavy some of this feels. And it is heavy. This is the heavy stuff. So this is where you really make progress too. So there's payoff for the fact that it's not the most fluffy part of the process. So.
One thing I will add to is shadow work. It's not about anybody else. It's always our own stuff. I know EFT, you know, the tapping technique, theta, different modalities that we use with energy work. It's looking at our belief of whatever situation's been going on. It's not about, well, if others were different, if they wouldn't do, you know, if they would just stop doing this, then I would be okay. It's like, no, it's your belief around how the situation's showing up. It's our work on ourselves, not changing anybody else.
And nobody can really do the work but you know, as energy healers, you know, light workers, theta, you know, we're there to help and assist, but we can't do the work for our clients. It's an inside job.
Yeah,
It is
all the way.
an inside job. Yeah. Yeah. We're just there to hold space and help. Yeah. All right. Well, is that all we have to say about shadow work, ladies? For now?
For now. Till the next layer comes. Just kidding.
Right, till the next layer. Actually, I have gotten to that point that when a shadow comes up, I go, oh, darn. Oh, good. All right. This is another thing I can just clear it. I never thought I'd say that, but it is. When you do it, it does get easier. So we're glad that you're here watching our video, and we hope that you got a lot out of it, as we always do when we're sharing together. All of our social media descriptions and places to go are down below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and share these videos to anybody who you think it might resonate with. So until next time, bye for now.
See you next week.